Okay, I'll start over. Now we're recording. My name is Vanessa Palacios. I am a project manager in web services at UCSF. I'm here today to be kind of Anne's backup UCSF expert. And I'm here to help kind of host the webinar. So today's webinar is from Canopy Studios about how to prepare for a website project. Canopy designs, builds, and supports websites for clients, and they want to make a positive impact. We've been partners with them for 3+ years.
Since 2013. So long ago.
Okay, so before I graduated college, so a little farther than that. A little bit about Anne. So Anne's the founder and CEO of Canopy Studios. She's creative. She's amazing. She likes to help customers, turn their client conversations into available outcomes, something that, your sites are going to be audience centric. They're going to be designed beautifully. She likes identifying problems and empowering Canopy to help, execute the best solution for your project. So today we're going to be providing live captioning that Anne put into the chat. So if anybody needs it via ThysIn, it'll be available for today's webinar. And as a reminder, you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen at any time to put in questions. Then we'll go through all of those after the session. And the presentation should be about 15 minutes. And then the last 10 minutes, we can do Q&A. So without further ado, I'll turn it back over to Anne.
All right. So if I can just get a validation that you folks can see my screen. There, oh, I have to see where the chat is.
Yep, it looks like everybody can see it.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. And then I've got, okay, well, let's go ahead and dig in. I want to leave lots of time for Q&A because I know there's lots of folks that have registered and folks that will probably see the recording after because that's the way these sometimes work. But again, thank you, Vanessa, for the warm introduction. My name's Anne Stefanik and I'm founder and CEO of Canopy. My pronouns are she, her. And at Canopy, as Vanessa mentioned, we design, build, and support websites for clients who want to make a positive impact, which is UCSF. We've been working with UCSF since way back the day in 2013, and we worked in all capacities from design, development, and lots of support. My contact information is there, and you feel free to reach out to me at any time, or that QR code is my LinkedIn code. So you can also just take a picture of that and LinkedIn me. I'd love to hear from you. All right, so let's dive in. I don't know if you know this, but the average website lasts only a mere 2.7 years. I'm curious, for those that are here, how long have you had your website? Please feel free to share in the chat. I know that when working with UCSF, for example, 1 month, look at that, that's a new website, but 2 years. Let's see what else everybody else has. I know I work with the Department of Urology and they are 9 years strong. And most often, which Drupal, if you're already on Drupal, this will be able to extend your life. Now, there's a whole bunch of caveats to that, especially for on Drupal 7, but it does look in the chat. We actually have some folks that have been online for about 5 or 6 years. And then there's some folks that are fairly new at only about 1 month, 1 year, or 10 months since go live. So I'd love to chat more in the Q&A about what you're on and how we can help. Anywho, even the Department of Urology being 9 years strong, eventually they need to build their website again. And their website is on Drupal 7. If you know that you're on Drupal 7, if you don't know which technology you're on, that's okay too. We'll give some hinters on how to figure that out soon. But you will eventually need to rebuild your website. More than 10 years. All right. So when you have to rebuild your website, this is a large amount of effort. You will need to completely tear down your website and you'll have an opportunity to completely reimagine. And what this means is that if you're just to take your website and build it in a new platform, that's a technology project. And that maybe is what you need to do. But most often when you are going to tear down the entire, kind of think of it like a house, right? When you need to have a brand new house, why don't you put in the kitchen that you like? Why don't you go ahead and, pick the bathroom fixtures that really make you happy? Or maybe you want a really, amazing garage that you can put all your tools in. Either way, it's an opportunity to you to really rethink all of your content. And there's many things you can do to prepare, which is why you're here. So let's talk about some signals that show that you would have to undertake a rebuild. First off, if you're perhaps you have a site and you need UCSF ITS support, or maybe you need features such as profiles, news events, or single sign-on, and you don't currently have that. Maybe your site is hard to edit, or it doesn't meet the branding and accessibility guidelines. Maybe it's straight up crashing. A scary thing that happens to a lot of folks that I know, not a lot, but occasionally this has happened at UCSF, is IT found a security vulnerability in that site, forcing you to rebuild, or maybe you're on an unsecure server, a hosting environment, and ITS has said time to rebuild. But the most common reason that people rebuild sites is that your site is dated and it's not achieving the results that you want. So for specifics, what are your options at UCSF? So I always like to start off as kind of a decision tree. What kind of site do you have now? So do you folks know what kind of site you have? If you do, why don't you go ahead and pop it in the chat? If you want to know what site what technology your site is built in, you can go to builtwith.com, and maybe even Vanessa or Allison, you can put that in the chat window. And then you can take a look and see the technology stack. And I can help you with that too. Just send me a message. But overall, perhaps you don't have a site. And that is, if you don't have a site, then you could either start with a custom 9 Drupal site today, or you could start on a Drupal 7 site builder. And we'll talk about pros and cons and options around those in just a minute. Or perhaps that you want to build a custom website. And if you have a custom website now, you're most likely going to need a custom website going forward. Maybe your current site is WordPress. If your site is on WordPress, you may need to rebuild if you want to take advantage of the integration with profiles, single sign-on, and other UCSF services. Perhaps if you're outside of the UCSF brand standards already, it might be time to get onto Drupal. If you're already in Drupal, and this is why I'm curious if maybe some folks that are new, if they've recently built, if you're on Drupal 9, you're set. You don't actually need to do a rebuild, potentially ever again. And there's a lot of conversation around that, but at least for the next 10 years. And what that means is that we should have more conversation in Q&A if you are on Drupal 9 and starting to think of a rebuild. Now, if you're on Drupal 7 and perhaps you've spun up a Drupal 7 site recently on the site builder, you do have some options. Okay, so let's continue on. So for some Drupal 7 options, what you are looking for is to stay put for now. Let's see if let me see. Allison is just mentioning, can you see my whole desktop? Let me see if I can actually change that to just this. Is that better? Now you don't see all of my chaos on my desktop. Okay, so if you're on Drupal 7, you can stay put. So the one thing is that Drupal 7 will be end of life November 2022, but we have options, and we'll go over that in a second, because UCSF specifically will be supporting Drupal 7 until 2025 from a long-term support provider called, and that's Acquia. Alternatively, you can launch a custom site. You can do that right now, and you can leverage the best of Drupal 9 at UCSF. Or you can wait for the Drupal 9 site builder. We're going to talk about these options in just a second. And if you can't wait for the Drupal 9 site builder, then you could get started on the Drupal 7 site builder. You would just want to be prepared for a migration within the near future. If you notice, 2 of these options were to wait. We don't want you to wait forever, but if you have chosen to stay on Drupal 7 just a little longer to maximize what you have, you can work on content and you can work on accessibility. Those things will translate into your new site. So you want to always keep those top of mind. So let's just quickly talk about Drupal 7 end of life. So what does Drupal end of life actually mean? It means that the main Drupal.org is no longer providing security updates or features. So ITS will be supporting Drupal 7 sites, but they will only be providing security updates. They will not be providing any new features. So while if you're on Drupal 7, you eventually have to move and you will be in end of life territory after November 2022. So you really want to start thinking about this work, even if you're going to stay. Okay, so let's get back to your options. So building something Drupal 9 at UCSF can start anytime. You can also connect with all of the features, including single sign-on, profile news events, only you can make them look differently than they do in the template. You'll be able to create beautiful custom websites with animations, graphics, custom elements, all while still leveraging the UCSF pattern library for brand and accessibility compliance. If you want to start with a site builder, it's a template created by UCSF, and it comes with a host of attractive features, including those integrations with events, profiles, and news. Best of all, it's free for anybody starting a site at UCSF. And as a heads up, the site builder is currently well underway and is planned to launch for summer 2022, which is why I said you might just want to wait. Note that ITS may change that schedule and you want to stay in touch with them for exact dates. Now, if you need a website today and you really need something right now, you can start on the Drupal 7 site builder. There's no harm in that. And you'll just want to stay a little bit longer knowing you're kind of doing what the site builder does best, which is a templated approach. It's fast, it's affordable, and ITS, it's planning to create a migration path from 7 to the latest version of the site builder. Now, if you're on WordPress at UCSF, WordPress is not generally supported at UCSF. So if your site's not already on WordPress, I would recommend not going with WordPress. Now, if you are on WordPress, you do have some options. Pantheon is the other hosting provider, and they'll provide hosting for UCSF for you, but you just won't be connected to all of the profiles integrations and the news integrations. So if you're on WordPress, you can stay, you may want to rebuild, and let's talk about that in the Q&A. So let's just look at some signals to help you figure out whether your site should be a custom website or a site builder website. So first off, some signals to choose custom is perhaps you have a large site with multiple divisions, or you really need to have a unique design. Maybe you want new or different features, and maybe you wanted to spend a good amount of time doing user research or testing. And ultimately, if you're wanting to make a substantial investment into your digital presence, you want to think about those, audiences and real deep user pathways. And that usually results in building a website that's going to last you for the next 10 years by building something custom. Signals to choose the site builder website is maybe you just need something real quickly. And perhaps you want easy. If you want the easy button, it means plug and play, out of the box site, this is a great option. Maybe you're only going to need your site for a few years. Maybe you're going to build a lab site. Maybe you're a research group needing a site. If you're a team of one or a small team and you just need to have a website, this is a great option for you. Or maybe you're running a community initiative or a small program. These are great examples how you can get going today on a site builder. Okay, so let's look at some pros and cons. And I believe that's Anne, AB, if I'm correct. I will definitely show some site builder examples. Okay, so first off, the pros of is that it's production ready. It means you can get going today and you'll have a website that'll last you for a very long time. It's of course connected to all of the, it's got a really unique design and adheres all to the branding and accessibility guidelines. It's also connected to those, the infrastructure, but you can customize those elements. Really, the only con of a custom website is it takes more money and it takes more time. As for the site builder, lots of pros here too. It's affordable and really fast to spin up. It really allows you to just plug and play. You already are adhering to UCSF branding and accessibility guidelines, and you're connected with what's out of the box for profiles, events, news, and single sign-on. The only cons is that if you really are unable to customize the look and feel, and your features are limited to features that are in the template. A temporary con is it's only available in Drupal 7, which will force you to rebuild in the next 4 years, but that is temporary because soon you'll have a Drupal 9 ready site builder. So what I'd encourage you, and this is a great segue, Anne, is to go to the Showcase website. And Showcase, either you can just Google Showcase UCSF websites and this URL will pop up, or maybe some of the hosts can pop it into the thread there. But you can take and build some basic site builder sites. The Latinx and the Communicators Networks are fairly new launches too. So I would take a look at both of those. If you want to do a slightly modified, we can modify some of the design elements, the colors, as long as they're on brand. We can kind of modify things in a way that works. And here you can also take a look at the site builders or the Showcase website, and it will have some I call them modified because they're not, you don't really customize them, but. And then when it comes to custom, sky's the limit. We can do lots of fun stuff. For example, the Department of Medicine is a project that we collaborated on with Web Services and Canopy. And I believe the Brain Tumors one, custom one that Web Services did. Okie dokie. So now how do you get your site built? So some options to get started. First off, you can totally do this yourself. Now, if you are a surgeon or a busy person, you might not have capacity to build a website, and that's where you can always lean and work with IT Web Services. UCSF has its own internal agency that can jumpstart your project for a really cost-effective option. And finally, you can also work with a Drupal contractor like Canopy to build a custom Drupal 9 site, and Canopy specifically has the specialty in building out site builder sites as well. Okay, so how do you actually get started and how do you actually prepare for this now that you kind of understand the landscape? So if we're looking at before you actually go anywhere, you want to start rallying your humans. You want to talk to them, you want to find out their needs, their wants, their goals. We find it's really important when working with smart people like you folks interface with every single day is to get clear on your North Star. What are the goals of the site? Then what you can do to prepare is do a deep content inventory. You really want to do an inventory of what you need to move, rewrite, delete, kind of get your head wrapped around all of the different elements on your site. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Then you want to start writing down your requirements. This is something that it's helpful to either have a shared document or a Google Doc, perhaps, if you can do that. If not, kind of a shared space where you can start writing down the requirements of the site. Now, I'll tell you about some tips and tricks to extract those in a minute. And finally, you want some budget clarity. Before you go and ask for a quote from vendors, you actually want to have a number that you know your department is comfortable spending. And it really depends. People always say, well, how much does a website cost? And that's a really complicated question because you could say, how much is a car? And a car could be anything from like, I don't know what the latest fancy model of the Tesla is, but the most fancy model of the Tesla down to like the Volkswagen van that was refurbed and, needs frequent oil changes, right? The cost of a car is very different depending on your needs, but it is something you want to have clarity on before you start talking to Web Services or even, an agency like us. And sometimes that means having some pre-game conversations with agencies or with Web Services to get how much, if it was a ballpark, and you can get some ballparks to then have those conversations. Okay, so let's quickly take these one by one. I can't reiterate enough how risky all of the humans are. And I mean that with the most sincerity that the humans are the ones that are going to be interfacing with the site. And you really want to make sure you understand their needs and their goals, because there's many people on your project. You have your website visitors, but you also have stakeholders approving the budget. And you also have UCSF as a whole. So they'll all have a stake in your project. And what you'll want to understand is their needs, their wants, their goals. Some of them will be straight up conflicting and you're going to have to navigate those items. And there'll also be a ton of people, and I've seen this time and time again at UCSF, the stakeholders have the enthusiasm, but have zero capacity. So you may need to chase a surgeon down the hall with an iPad. We have done that to get sign off because that's they need to sign off on things, but they're often so busy. When you're talking about getting in front, when you're talking about humans, the best thing is to get in front of them, which is create some surveys that you can send out that are short 5-question surveys just to get their ideas. What are your goals? Ask them what kind of sites they like and why. That, my friends, is when people fill out the survey, those are the people that will be engaged mostly in your project. Those that don't and go, well, why didn't I get an opinion? You can say, I sent you a survey. Like you're doing your best to rally their minds. And if they can't participate in the survey, they'll soon see that it's going to be hard for them to participate in the project, and they'll start delegating subject matter experts or leaders within their cohort to get the work done. You also want to create this collaborative documentation in any way, shape, or form that you can. And that might be even a type form, right? Or a way that they can provide feedback, some type of form. I wish I had this feature. I wish I had that one. And again, gather their North Star, right? And there's certain people are going to have certain priorities, right? If they're taking care of the patients, patient care is going to be number one for them. Or if they're facilitating researchers and getting research out and being known as a world-class leader, they're going to have different priorities. So kind of getting onto that global North Star. The site is meant for this, and these types of activities support our, and kind of mapping that out with them. I could do a whole webinar on people management. But the other thing is you want to really look at content, and I want to be mindful of time here. So with content, if your site is around 500 pages, you can use Screaming Frog and take your URL and pop it in. It'll pop out an Excel. You can then start entering data. And that is starting with defining the type of content that it is. So you can say, this is a blog, this is a news, this is a custom page about this, and you can start cataloging the types of content you have. If you want to take it to another level of sophistication, which will really help when you're thinking about the new site and where all the different rooms go in the house, you can start thinking about, who is this content for? Is it for patient care? Is it for research? Is it for educators? Is it for, do we have a special fundraising? Is it for donors? Who is this for? And that will also identify your gaps. You'll say, wow, we have a lot of content for researchers, but we really have very little for patient care. And we are this department, we do this, like we need to up our ante and make sure we have good content for our patients. It kind of points out what needs to be built. And also it gives either if web services or an agency like Canopy gives us something to hold on to start with when we start mapping things into the new structure. Because you want to get clear on those features when you either talk to anybody. And that means, again, by reviewing content, you will extract features. You want to go through every single page on your site. So if you hit the contact form and you're like, oh, this is actually a Salesforce form. Oh, this is integrated with Salesforce. I'm going to go to that document and put a line item that says must integrate with Salesforce. Another thing is that when you're pulling together these requirements, talk to Jill and Vanessa. They've got great requirements to put in there. And please always make sure that accessibility is not an optional, it is a requirement of your project. Okay, I'm going to zip through this because if you're going to do a project, I'm actually going to stop there because we have about 7 minutes left. And I wanted to make sure that we had lots of good time for Q&A. And then I can share these slides because this really is the different types of steps that you would go through when you're doing a project. And so this is going to help you think when you're building out, the plan on how to get the money or talk to the people. You say, well, these are the steps we're going to go through. We're going to do some discovery work. Then we're going to do some content and some creative work. And again, I could do a whole webinar on all this. And then we're going to go into this technical phase where we're going to have to do all the planning and the development, and we're going to implement the design, and then we're going to test and deploy, all with the help of UCSF, no matter which way you go. And then here are the elements that you're going to want to put together the RFP. So again, I would love to share this with you, and then we can have a call where I can help you put this together. I've helped a lot of people. We're very busy at work. So, but this is where you really want to start with. These are the elements that you want to have on a document that you take to web services or Canopy or even a DIY, just so you can get your head wrapped around the game to say, okay, this is our overview. These are our goals. These are our features. These are the services we want. Like maybe we need more writing. You need to actually help us write. We recognize we don't want to do it. We can't do it. Your budget, your timeline. And then what you want from your partner, right? Like, hey, you must have developed, X number of UCF sites within the last 3 years, or you must have a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, or you must, put down requirements that will make a good partner. Okay, that went way longer than my dry run. Of course it did. So I wanted to stop there for questions and see if we can have a dialogue about anything, or if there's anything you wanted to dig into.
Thanks for that presentation, Anne. Yeah, so just a reminder again, if anybody has any questions, you can drop them in the Q&A or you can drop them in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer any of them.
Maybe it's a good thing I talked all the time. I just explained everything. Just kidding. It looks like Molly has her hand up. Can we do allow to talk or? Oh, maybe Molly doesn't have a question. Oh, good. Okay, cool. Yeah, no worries. Sounds good. Oh, there's Molly. We're coming into the party.
Hi. So I simultaneously Googled screamingfrog.co.uk. And I was just curious if so I see there's a free and a paid version. And so Vanessa, this might be a question for you, but does Site Improve do any of the similar features?
Site Improve can inventory some of the pages. When we do our regular jump starts, we use Screaming Frog, and like it's the free version of it, so you can kind of just get even smaller sites. The easiest thing to do. I definitely recommend using Site Improve for when you're going through the process of building the site, but you can still, see how many PDFs you have, and there's a lot of other benefits to using Site Improve as well.
I would use both. And one of the things that we had to zip through on Discovery is part of that you want to, as when you get into your project, you'll talk to your stakeholders and then you'll validate with your users and you'll look at your data. And that's where Site Improve is like the UCSF data tool. You can use analytics, right? But Site Improve, you're going to get support on, which is nice because help is good. And if the Screaming Frog, you need just the free one and you can just pop your in. It's pretty rough around the edges, but it's free. So
yeah, I'd also say, like Anne was back to what Anne was saying, when you're talking to your leadership and doing discovery, find where all the bodies are buried. People use Wiki or intranets and a bunch of other different places to store their content. Screaming Frog will only pick up the public facing sites. So make sure you ask around, and the person who's been working at UCSF for 20 plus years, who has like a weird Word doc on Box or something of all the processes, like make sure you talk to those people because they have all the industry knowledge.
Yeah. And the question is, what was the biggest bugaboo that holds up a website update? Honestly, it's lack of clarity in done is the best thing you can do for your site. This is where helping plan and going through the different creative phases. We use user stories because it's human, plain old English. And what you do is, as this type of user, I want to achieve this goal to receive this benefit. So, as a student to the School of Nursing, I want to be able to come to the website and apply. Although that sounds so I can then, that sounds very basic and that's very rudimentary in the philosophy of it. Like it's just, and then you'd put a little sidebar and say, okay, there must be an apply now button, and that has to have a transactional email that thanks them for their email, and there'll have to be a thank you page. And on that thank you page, we want to probably put some different calls to action so they don't feel anxious because now they've just applied to School of Nursing, which is really competitive. And so we're going to put this little guided step. So, one little user story can actually be backfilled by, web services or an agency like us to understand what you want to do. So a lot of that, if we can define done really clearly, that helps, which again is helping you as the stakeholder understand what you're getting, and then also people for signing off.
It looks like there's another question that if UCSF IT built our current site builder website, is there any automatic migration possible for Drupal 9 if we don't plan to make any changes? So there isn't currently a magic button, unfortunately, that can make the migration from this current site builder to the new one. There will be a little bit of work involved, but kind of like Anne was mentioning, going through and doing the inventory before, making sure that your site's accessible. Your future self will thank you if you do that work up front. So I would recommend taking a look at it before you plan on moving it to Drupal 9 site builder.
Yeah, the more like the site builder you can customize, the less customized you are will be better for a migration, but there will be some lift, right? And there's the idea of if it's a technology project, it's only like a one-to-one. So you might just be able to kind of lift and shift into the new Drupal 9 platform. If your site is 7 or 8 years old, you might not want to take something that's 8 years old in technology. You might really want to think about your content and say, oh, if I'm even moving from a Drupal 7 site builder to the Drupal 9 site builder, maybe we should look at all of our content and see if it's still organized the best way possible. And that's something if you did on your current 7 site, it's easier than to port into 9.
Molly has another question. Sorry, this was already mentioned, but when will the Drupal 9 site builder be available? So that's currently going to be available summer 2022. So next 6 months or so, subject to change. But I think that's what our team's target is at the moment.
Well, I know we're just at time and we covered a ton of stuff and we didn't have nearly as much time for Q&A. So I'd encourage you to reach out. I'll kind of reach out to you all on LinkedIn too, because that's my domain of chatting people up and helping them. So know that we're always here to help in whichever way, shape, or form. And we really appreciate this opportunity to share a little bit more on builds over at UCSF because they're complex. So I mean, I think there's a final question for you, Vanessa, here. Is there a place we can connect on more UCSF teams?
Yes, you can check out the UCSF Communicators Network. There'll be a lot of updates for the new site builder that's going to be moving Drupal 9. So our team regularly puts a lot of stuff on there. You can alternatively also join the public Teams channel for web services. And I will either send it to Anne or Allison will send it out with the slide deck as well at the end of this.
Exactly. All right, happy to help. And thanks again for the opportunity to chat with everybody. Hope everybody has a terrific Tuesday or whenever you're watching this. Have a great day.